Welcome to the Personal Tanya, Day 6, as we take on game-changing ideas in the Daily Tanya. So we've learned now about the fact that we've got not one but two souls inside each and every one of us. That's interesting. The question is, which one of those souls am I going to identify with? So here comes the Tanya to teach us in chapter 4 today, that our souls are actually manifest. Just like our bodies manifest in clothing, you wouldn't walk around naked in the streets. So too our souls are not able to interact with anything else other than themselves unless they're clothed, because there's such a thing as soul clothing or soul garments. These soul garments are specifically three platforms that express our souls. They are thought, speech, and action. Every time we think, we're expressing our soul. Every time we speak, we're expressing our soul. And every time we're acting or doing something, we're manifesting our soul. Remember what our soul is intellect and emotion. So what you choose to think, speak, or act about is an expression of your soul. The question is, which soul are you wearing? You've got a choice. You could be wearing your godly soul, or you could be wearing your natural soul. It's a choice that you make, which is as simple and foundational as what you're going to wear today. Now remember, the clothing that you wear has a profound influence on how you feel. We're going to learn about that a little bit later in the chapter, but it's this idea that we're encountering today, the expressions of the soul in the three platforms, the three garments, the clothings of the soul, which are thought, speech, and action. Specifically, the Tanya tells us that there are 613 garments to our soul. That number is probably familiar to you because of the 613 mitzvahs, the commandments of the Torah. And that is not random. The reason is because each and every mitzvah corresponds to one of the garments of our soul. And that's why it's so important for each and every one of us to fulfill every one of the 613 commandments, to ensure that we don't show up to the party underdressed. Because when we get to heaven, when we reach the state of the redemption of Mashiach, the resurrection of the dead, we're all going to need to be fully dressed. And that dress code is the clothing of our souls. It's the fulfillment of the mitzvahs. That's why later in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe quotes the Arizal, who says, the Kabbalist Arizal, who tells us that each and every one of us needs to reincarnate, to come back to this world in order to finish the checklist of 613 commandments. So if you are feeling like you might be lagging, don't worry about it. In a previous lifetime, you might have fulfilled many of the 613 commandments, and you're back now in order to finish off the list. But realize how important it is for us to fulfill all 613 commandments, because they correspond to the 613 garments of our soul. Each time a mitzvah is fulfilled, you validate that garment and you make sure that you're fully dressed. Now, one final point that the Alter Rebbe adds on here is the importance, obviously in a marriage, in a relationship. It's important not only to have feelings for your spouse, but to express those feelings to your spouse. That's why it's so important to have these soul garments. It's one thing for my wife to have a wife and to feel love for your wife, but unless you tell her how you feel, the relationship is going to be a little bit on a plateau. It's important to speak, to think, and to act your emotions and your intellect in order to be able to encounter and to experience a true relationship. It's important to express that. But in order to express the soul, in order to feel, in order to manifest in thought, speech, and action, it's critical. The Alter Rebbe's final point, he says in today's Tanya, is that it's critical to have emotions. You can't just think, speak, or feel something unless it's powered by that emotion. Remember, thought, speech, and action is just the garment of the emotion and of the intellect. In much the same way, in our relationship with God, if we're going to nurture a relationship with God, it can't just be lip service. It can't just be action. It's got to be driven by an emotional connection. And this is where we're going in the book of Tanya. We're aspiring towards a personal relationship with God, a personal relationship with yourself and with your own soul. And that comes about through meditating upon the greatness of God, upon the incredible power of God, which will result in both a feeling of love as well as a feeling of respect, of awe. And it's those two emotions that are the primary emotions within us that motivate the thought, the speech, and the action. If you're going to have a healthy relationship with someone you love, with someone else, you're going to have to feel that love. You're going to have an emotion. And the same goes for God. If you're going to take your relationship with God to the next level, it cannot just be skin deep. It's got to be driven and motivated by your emotions. It's our goal in the book of Tanya to develop and nurture a personal, emotional relationship with God. Thank you, and reflect on this.